Why don't people start developing themselves? It begins with a straightforward question. How often do you work on yourself but never truly own anything? You read, you listen, you get excited, and then after a while, you're back at the same point. The problem isn't with you, or even with your attempts, or even your intelligence. It's that people don't invest in themselves. Instead, they consume self-monitoring, and that's dangerous. Most people, when they say they're developing or motivating themselves, mean three things: watching videos, buying a course, or reading books. But not all learning is development, and not all development is investment. True investment has one condition: it must bring you tangible benefits in your life. And if a year later you continue with the same income, the same mindset, and the same problems, then know that you haven't invested. You've simply filled your time with the feeling that you're doing something important. And that's more dangerous than laziness. Because it's more about perception than reality, people sometimes feel they're progressing while standing still. When you see a video, you feel understood, motivated, and better than before. But reality doesn't reflect this. The need to progress is like someone buying exercise equipment, a Toyota, and talking about it, but their actual body hasn't changed. This is the fundamental difference between exciting motivation and slow motivation. While small-scale motivation requires time, doesn't necessitate making a decision, and doesn't require prolonged control to feel like you're on the right track. Investing early requires noticing things, making a difference every day, and contributing to it over time. Moderate motivation builds you up like a ninja, but it's stagnant. The reason people get bored with self-improvement is because they enter the field too quickly. The content says, "You're amazing. Just believe in yourself," while reality says, "You need a system, skills, and discipline." When you don't see results, you doubt yourself, you doubt the content, and then you abandon the whole idea. That's when you lose twice, your time and your belief in change. Many people start enthusiastically, reading a book, perhaps a Toyota series, and creating a beautiful plan. Then, months later, they say, "I tried it, but it didn't work." But they haven't experienced true investment. They've merely consumed content. Therefore, always ask yourself, honestly and without embellishment, will what I've learned change my future situation? If the answer is no, then the knowledge is worthless. If the answer is yes, then who is investing? Knowledge that doesn't change a decision isn't power, it's just weight. This is where it begins. Before we learn skills related to money, time, or a project, we must shift our perspective from how do I develop myself to how do I become authentic in reality. This question will prompt you to consider why you're learning, why you're continuing, and when to stop. Now you can do something simple but honest. Pause reading for a moment and ask yourself, what was the last thing I learned? What changed in my life? And if nothing changed, why continue? Don't look for a fancy answer, but a genuine one. From this moment on, we will no longer think about general self-improvement, selling the illusion of speed, or offering ready-made solutions. Instead, we will deconstruct and rebuild the human being as an investment asset, from organs to skills, then time, money, environment, system, and finally, results. If you are looking for something good or temporarily enjoyable, this content is not for you. But it is a path if you are looking for real, tangible change, a sense of value rather than mere entertainment. Efficiency is now in the right place. The next topic will be, you are a project. Do you know what your product is? Begins with a realistic self-analysis, far removed from empty platitudes and philosophy. For habits, we need to start with a simple truth. You are a project. And like any project, if you don't know what your product is, any effort you put in is wasted. Most people think investing in themselves means learning everything and anything, following every trend, reading every book, taking every course. But the reality is, you can be busy all day consuming endless content and still have zero real value to offer the world. The first step is brutally honest self-discovery. You need to understand your strengths, not the ones you like to imagine. Not the ones that sound good on paper, but the strengths that actually create impact. And you need to understand your weaknesses, the ones that quietly sabotage every effort you make. Many people ignore their weaknesses, thinking they are minor, but a small, unnoticed flaw can collapse months of investment. Ask yourself, what do people actually notice about you? Not what you tell them, not what you think about yourself, but what others naturally turn to you for. This is a goldmine. Maybe you are the one who naturally explains complex ideas, solves problems, or notices details others miss. These are not hobbies. These are signals of your product. The real question is, are you packaging it, refining it, and turning it into value? Or are you letting it sit idle, like a resource wasting away in a drawer? Here's the harsh truth. Many people fail not because they lack talent, but because they invest in the wrong things. They study skills no one needs, chase trends that fade in months, and fill their brains with random knowledge. All of that is like buying fancy ingredients but never cooking a meal. The market, life, and opportunity only care about the result, not your effort. Your product is what you offer consistently, reliably, and meaningfully. So, how do you find it? Start with these practical steps. First, write down 3 things people often ask for your help with. Don't overthink, just note the patterns. Second, identify the problems you solve naturally that bring relief, clarity, or progress to others. Third, consider the skills that connect your strengths to real outcomes. If a skill doesn't improve someone's life, solve a problem, or create tangible value, it's not worth your time yet. Now, let's confront another uncomfortable reality. Most people avoid this process because it's hard work. It requires honesty, reflection, and sometimes admitting you've been wasting time. But if you skip it, all the learning, courses, and books in the world won't make a difference. You can accumulate knowledge, but without understanding what your product is, you are a warehouse of unused potential. The next step is packaging. Once you know your product, the combination of your strengths, problem-solving skills, and unique approach, you must refine it. Sharpen it. Make it visible, actionable, and ready to be applied in real situations. And remember, this is not about perfection. Your product doesn't have to be fully polished at first. It just has to be valuable and deployable. Here's the final reality check. The world doesn't reward effort. It rewards impact. You could spend years developing yourself, and if your product is unclear or unrefined, you will remain unnoticed, undervalued, and underpaid. On the other hand, if you focus on clarifying, refining, and applying your unique product, every action you take compounds. Every book, course, conversation, or experiment starts adding real value. So, from this moment on, forget the idea of random self-improvement. Start thinking like an entrepreneur of yourself. Identify your product. Understand the demand. Refine your offer. And then, finally, everything else you learn will have a purpose, a direction, and measurable results. This is where real transformation begins. Not in reading, not in motivation, not in dreaming, but in knowing exactly what you bring to the table and making sure it matters. The next module will take this further. How to turn your mind into your most valuable asset and build a foundation that supports every skill, every decision, and every action you take. The mind as your most valuable asset. Now that you know you are a project and have identified your unique product, it's time to talk about the most important asset you own, your mind. Everything you do, every skill you acquire, every decision you make flows through your thinking. The harsh truth is that most people sabotage their own growth because they treat their mind as a passive observer instead of an active investment. Think about this. People can take the same course, read the same book, even attend the same seminar. One person implements what they learn. adapts it to their life, and grows exponentially. The other consumes all the information, feels inspired for a week, and returns to the same habits. What makes the difference? The way they think. One treats knowledge as fuel. The other treats it as decoration. Most of us carry hidden mental habits that quietly destroy progress. These include the victim mindset, where every obstacle is someone else's fault. The comparison trap, which convinces you that everyone else is ahead while you're failing. And the instant results illusion, which expects change overnight. These mental patterns are like invisible taxes on your success. They drain energy, slow action, and limit results, no matter how many skills you acquire. The key is learning how to reprogram your thinking. Start with questions, not answers. Instead of asking, "Why am I failing?" ask, "What skill or knowledge will allow me to take the next step?" Instead of saying, "I'm not ready," ask, "What can I do today that moves me closer to being ready?" Your questions shape your brain's focus and determine whether you notice opportunities or ignore them. Here's a practical exercise for 1 week. Every time you catch yourself complaining or feeling stuck, stop and write down a question that reframes the situation into an actionable step. For example, if you think, "I don't have time to learn X," change it to, "What is one small thing I can do today to practice X?" This simple habit shifts your mind from passive to strategic. Another mental trap is the obsession with perfection. Many people delay action because they want their skills, plans, or projects to be flawless. The reality is, action creates clarity, not the other way around. You cannot learn faster by thinking more. You learn faster by doing, adjusting, and repeating. Your mind must be trained to value progress over perfection, insight over comfort, and experimentation over certainty. Finally, understand that your mind is like a muscle. If you feed it nonsense, distraction, or overconsumption, it becomes weak and indecisive. If you challenge it, question it, and direct it intentionally, it grows stronger and sharper every day. The difference between someone stuck in mediocrity and someone who achieves exponential growth is not talent. It's disciplined thinking. So from this point onward, treat your mind as your most valuable asset. Protect it from distractions, toxic input, and mental habits that drain energy. Feed it with questions, challenges, and actionable insights. Every book you read, every lesson you take, every experiment you try should pass through your mind as an active processor, not a passive receiver. When your mind becomes your ally, everything else becomes easier. Learning new skills, managing time, making money, and building your environment. The next module will show you exactly which skills give the highest return on investment and how to prioritize them so that your time, effort, and energy convert into real value that lasts. Smart learning. Why learning more is not the same as learning better at this stage. Many people make a critical mistake. Once they realize that mindset matters and that they need skills, they assume the solution is simple. Learn more. More books, more courses, more videos, more information. But this is where progress quietly dies, because learning by itself is not an investment. Only the right kind of learning is. The modern world is flooded with knowledge. You can learn almost anything for free at any time. Yet paradoxically, people are more confused, overwhelmed, and stuck than ever. The problem is not lack of access. The problem is lack of direction. When learning is not connected to a clear purpose, it becomes mental clutter instead of leverage. Smart learning begins with a hard question. What problem will this knowledge help me solve? If you cannot answer that clearly, then what you are about to learn is likely entertainment, not investment. This is why many people finish books feeling inspired but unchanged. They collected ideas, not tools. There is a dangerous illusion in education, the belief that understanding equals ability. You can understand how a business works and still fail at running one. You can understand communication and still be unable to influence anyone. Real learning only happens when knowledge changes behavior. If your daily actions remain the same, your learning has failed, no matter how intelligent you sound. Smart learners reverse the traditional process. They do not start with information. They start with output. They ask, what do I need to produce? A result, a skill, a measurable improvement. Then they learn only what directly supports that outcome. Everything else is postponed, ignored, or discarded. This is not laziness. It is precision. Another common trap is learning too early. Many people study advanced concepts before mastering the basics. They want shortcuts, secrets, and complex frameworks while ignoring fundamentals. But fundamentals compound. A weak foundation turns advanced knowledge into confusion. Smart learning respects sequence. Basics first, mastery second. Optimization last. Here is a simple but powerful rule. Learn just enough to take the next action. Not the next 10 steps. Not the entire system. Just the next move. Action creates feedback, and feedback turns information into understanding. Without feedback, learning stays theoretical and fragile. Now consider this practical exercise. Think of one skill you want to improve right now. Not 10, just one. Ask yourself, what is the smallest action I can take today that proves I am learning this skill? Not studying it. Using it, practicing it, applying it in the real world. If learning does not lead to visible effort, it is incomplete. Smart learning also requires intentional forgetting. Yes, forgetting. Holding on to irrelevant knowledge drains mental energy. You do not need to know everything. You need to know what matters now. Focus creates power. Scattered learning creates noise. Ultimately, the goal of learning is not to feel intelligent. It is to become effective. When your learning strategy is aligned with clear outcomes, every hour you spend studying compounds. You stop feeling overwhelmed. You stop chasing trends. You stop consuming blindly. Learning becomes sharp, efficient, and deeply satisfying in the next module. We will build on this foundation and identify the higher-turn skills, the skills that dramatically increase your value, your opportunities, and your ability to shape your future. These are the skills that turn smart learning into real leverage.